To hate someone is a powerful emotional response that can easily escalate to violence. In his book, The Cure for Hate, former white supremacist Tony McAleer takes the reader inside his life story. Born into an affluent Vancouver family, the events of his life led him to join some of the most notorious neo-Nazi groups in Canada and the U.S. My initial reaction to reading his book and interviewing him was one of great hesitation. I did not want to give voice in any manner to the ideas of hate and xenophobia. With trepidation, I opened the book to discover the story of a lonely young man attempting to find his place in the world, a world that did not understand his emotional needs, and subsequently every action and reaction to him was another push into an unimaginable life. Once isolated from mainstream society, McAleer only had his new-found community to bond with, a community that provided him with the sense of belonging he desperately wanted. Now, not to paint a picture of poor Tony, because as he freely admits, he made decisions that firmly placed him in that world. He says, "I am not offering excuses, and I accept responsibility for what I did." Along the way, his beliefs changed. The journey away from hate, though, was a long and arduous one that lacked compassion and any understanding. Most certainly, there was little love. Yet it is love and radical compassion that McAleer says he and others must have to overcome hate. His book breaks down stereotypes and offers piercing insights into how regular people are drawn to hate and violent extremism. Most importantly, The Cure for Hate offers insights into the long and challenging path out of that world. We invited Tony McAleer, one of the founders of Life After Hate, to join us for a conversation that matters about his mission to help people leave hate groups.
Conversations That Matter is a partner program of the Center for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the following and viewers like you. Please become a patron at conversationsthatmatter.tv.
Tony McAleer, welcome to Conversations That Matter. And we have your book here, A Cure for Hate. When I was first presented with the book, I thought, okay, this is a pretty intense topic. And you take the reader through quite a remarkable journey, which is your journey. How difficult is it to write a book like this?
The hard part was going back and trying to capture the mindset I had at the time, to try and capture the arrogance, trying to capture the narcissism, trying to capture all that who I was and haven't been for a very long time.
Right.
That was the hard part, and I know after I wrote the chapters about going down to Aryan nations and stuff like that, and energetically, I felt dirty afterwards, and it took a couple days to get that energy.
Feeling away from you?
It's feeling. It's hard to describe. It's like an energy. I go for walks in the woods to clean that stuff off, and it took me a while. It was heavy. It was dark. I have a remarkable partner in Rhiannon Foster, who was with me through the whole thing, because I know it wasn't easy for here. I mean, it was.
I'm sure.
Almost end up in, a bit of a depression, a bit of irritability, and I wasn't myself for a few days after.
Because you're revisiting that part of your life that you're hoping to put distance between you and that.
Yeah, and there's parts in there that I didn't remember. I mean, it's in my memory, but the ego has an interesting way of shuffling things that we don't want to look at.
Does it ever?
And so, to making sure what I was saying was accurate, I was, checking the internet on stuff from my past, and I was like, oh, I forgot I did that.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot I was even involved with that group, and I was the leader of it. I mean, it's remarkable how the brain shuffles things away, but it took about a year to write.
I can imagine. You're a good writer. I really like the way that you describe so many elements of your life. Clearly, there's a tremendous amount of introspection that's gone into your work. I got a sense that I knew you. So you walk into the studio and I go, okay, I know you. I have a sense of the journey that you've been on. And, because I don't want to go step by step through the book, the main point that I get out of your book is that you're saying that nobody is beyond hope, but the most important thing that we have to do is to overwhelm them with love and compassion. It's a hard thing to do, and I think that you point that out. How do we as individuals who haven't been in, whether it's the white supremacist movement or whatever other kind of sector of society that may be challenging to deal with, how do we overcome that and embrace the individual? It
is difficult. It's a huge problem and a difficult one no matter what strategy you take. And I don't think we can tackle this issue from our comfort zone. We clearly have to step outside our comfort zone if we're going to tackle this. And it takes changing every action and every moment of every day. I talk about in the book about, as human beings, we come from either a place of love or a place of fear.
Yes.
Every action is born of one of those two. Mm-hmm. We get to choose which one.
So I got to get you to hang on for a second while we take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Conversations That Matter is brought to you by Odlum Brown, a client-focused investment firm that starts client relationships with straightforward conversations focused on you, your aspirations, and your investment priorities. Odlum Brown has been a supporter of Conversations That Matter from the day we started this show. Their only condition was that we provide a non-biased conversation with people from all sides of all sorts of issues. And of course, we couldn't produce this show without the support of Oh Boy Productions. If you're looking to produce a show like this one, I suggest you reach out to Oh Boy. They can help you produce it, and they can help you build your audience. And we also need your support. I ask you to please pledge $1 per show by going to conversationsthatmatter.tv/donate, because those dollars add up and play an important role in helping us produce this show. Now, back to the show. And which is, in an adult mindset, maybe is a little bit easier to make that decision, but as a child, it's almost impossible.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you found yourself in that position where you felt abandoned, emotionally at least, by your father in particular, and that led you to start to seek out attention. Is this a pretty normal course? And not necessarily that it's just father, but is it something where there is this yearning to know that you belong, that you are loved?
Absolutely. And the best way, I talk about this all the time, after Charlottesville, we got a letter at Life After Hate from a mother who said, my son's 18, he's found this white nationalist stuff online and he's up to his eyeballs in it. And she goes, I'm scared, I'm terrified. And she said, what terrifies me the most is that online community of white nationalists has embraced and accepted my son in a way that no one has in his entire life.
Right.
Right? So we're talking about, in most cases, deep psychological yearnings. That child would probably believe the earth was flat if that's what it to get that acceptance and stuff from a social group. And so it's the ideology. While it's there, while it's seductive, it has to have vulnerabilities to seduce. Mm-hmm. And what it offers is a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, camaraderie, a community. Often if you look into the history of a lot of the people that are joining, particularly the online version, they're socially isolated often. And I grew up in emotional abandonment in a very affluent neighborhood, when going to private schools where every material need was basically there. So it's not an issue of coming from a broken home or coming from poverty. This is something that can reach anybody,
regardless of socioeconomic
if
status.
If they have those vulnerabilities. And wealthy families can be just as dysfunctional as poor families.
Well, when I was reading your book, I was reminded that Adolf Adler, in his understanding of early childhood development, said the number one objective for a child is to know that they're loved by their parents. And if they're not getting it there, they're going to seek it somewhere else. And they do it through a wide variety of other behaviors. And so, you know, for you, the events of your life put you in the intersection of a wide variety of things that were unfolding. The punk rock scene, the skinhead movement, which ultimately led you into Aryan Nation. When you look back on it and you go through that process of reliving it, could you see how perfectly all of those elements just fell into place that allowed that to be the trajectory of your life?
When I go and unpack it, as I do in the book, and I, understanding, and I just want to be very clear here, I don't blame anything on my childhood.
Yes, and you're quite clear about that in the book.
Everything I did, I chose to do.
Yes.
But I share these stories from my childhood so you can understand the lens through which I made those choices, why those choices were attractive. And I got power when I felt powerless. I got attention when I felt invisible, and I got acceptance when I felt unlovable.
Yeah. So you came out the other end, and I want to jump ahead, but I also want to deal with something that I was reading in your book that I thought was extremely insightful, and the only way that you would know that is that you have been there. And you talked about when you had decided, after you had been beaten up in front of your son, and that was enough to push you to the point where you go, okay, I'm going to start to move away from this community that is now my identity. But in turning your back on that community, you turn to nothingness. And why is it, such a dangerous place to be when you're trying to transition from there to another stage in your life?
Yeah, and again, life after hate, this is a common theme in the people that we help to leave is, when we join those groups to begin with, we excommunicate ourselves from friends, family, society, and because we're not getting those basic needs met. After the honeymoon phase, and once disillusionment kicks in and we realize we're not getting those needs met at the new place to leave, we have to excommunicate ourselves again. But our original friends, society, and family aren't sitting with open arms to welcome us back.
No, they are not.
We've violated the trust in those relationships, and that trust needs to be rebuilt. And so there's a time in the middle that I call the void.
Yes.
Where people have to go through having no social circle. And most people haven't experienced that, but it's incredibly lonely. And the pain of that loneliness can often seem greater than the pain of the dysfunction of the group. And it's at that point where
you're at risk of going back.
So
Right.
at Life After Hate, what we've done is we've actually created an online private support group, a community of people that are either in the void or having moved through the void to assist those people, so nobody has to do it on their own.
You share that story about going to the pub, getting to know the owner and some of the locals, and then being told you're not welcome, and how devastating that was as you're trying to move into a new frame of life and not having a support group. That must have been incredibly hurtful.
Absolutely, but at that point, I still recognized that was a price that I had to pay for what I'd done.
Wow.
And it was a gut punch nonetheless, and I accepted it, and out of respect for the owner of that place, so it didn't come back. And that happened, I think, one other time. Was at a party with a different, new, growing social circle, and then somebody says, do you know who that guy is? And then, like that, the social circle's gone.
Like the entire social circle is gone, yes.
Like you have to leave.
Yeah.
And it's over, delete the phone numbers.
So then how then do we help people make that shift? Because I think that you pointed out something else that I watch people. We're in a time right now where there is, if I don't agree with you, I'm going to shout you down, or I'm going to tell you that you're stupid, or that your philosophy or ideology is all wrong. You point out that, well, that's the surefire way to ensure that somebody who has embraced that lifestyle stays committed to it. like how much of a driving force is that negative energy towards you going to keep you in that community?
Well, I know from having been there myself that the individuals and the groups involved thrive on two things: conflict and attention. And often we give them those things in spades when we protest, counter them, do that kind of thing, and you know, like Charlottesville, or you know what's happening in Portland. I think it's important that we call people out,
Yep.
but we also need to call people in, because I can tell you, I don't know anyone that left the movement because somebody threw a bottle at them at a protest. I don't know anyone that left the movement because someone on the opposite side of the fence berated them and shamed them into leaving. It's not an effective strategy. It might make you feel good. You get to feel right in the moment, but it simply isn't an effective strategy.
So what is that effective strategy? You talk about radical compassion.
Yeah, so again, it's calling people in. And since Charlottesville, Life After Hate has received over 300 requests from assistance, half from individuals, half from families. You know, in this 6 years from the time we started up until Charlottesville, we'd only helped 100 people. And it doubled at Charlottesville with the mass shootings that have happened. It's increased again. And it's not something that Life After Hate can manage, you know, to be the answer. But what we've learned is how to do it, and what we've developed is a training to help communities, to empower communities so that they can do it.
So what are the
themselves.
components of that program?
Well, I think first of all, we have to come at it from a place of compassion. You know, the ideas are monstrous, the activities are monstrous, but the human being doing them isn't. You know, there's an old expression, hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
And then we sort of have to recognize that. Now, compassion is so misunderstood. And I think compassion, the part that's often missing when we talk about compassion, is the healthy boundaries and consequences piece. Without healthy boundaries and consequences, you know, we can say, well, they've had a poor childhood or this and that, you know, well, we can understand them. But without holding people accountable at the same time, without having boundaries around future behavior, it's so often an invitation for further abuse. So,
and that's a tough part, because you're saying, I want to embrace who you are. I want to help foster this growth. But at the same time, I got to be a little bit tough on you if you cross that boundary.
that's right. It's tough love, right? You
Yeah.
know, it's giving people what they need, not necessarily what they want.
So you start this as a result of your own journey, having been there with no support network. Where are you at now? As far as Life After Hate, the group, how many people are involved? How does somebody get involved? And what are your next steps?
So if you go to lifeafterhate.org is the website. I think we're up to, including part-time staff, about 6.
Okay.
We have a number of volunteers. We have a fantastic board of directors. I'm not on staff anymore. I'm board chair, and I never did take a salary when I was there. We have a tremendous board of the who's who from understanding this space. So we have incredible wisdom at our disposal. We're putting in place great governance so that money, everything, every penny is accounted for, and we have audits every year and all that kind of thing. And then we have a number of volunteers, and so we're building our capacity to serve, because the problem in the United States and Canada is so massive.
It's not going away.
No, and so we think to ourselves, we're just this small nonprofit. How do we become scalable?
Yes.
And part of that is building out our capacity to service that community. But the second part is developing, and we've developed the training so that we can go to communities that have mental health workers, that have social workers, that have law enforcement, that are working in that space, but don't have the know-how that we have.
Well, the particular insight, especially into the white Aryan, white supremacist movement.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
teach them what it is and what it looks like, so how to recognize it when it's in front of you. And then we train them also in a parallel training of how to engage with it in the most effective manner. And regardless of what modality the professional is trained on, it just adds to their effectiveness when dealing with someone in that community. Because, the hardest thing that we find at Life After Hate is finding people to refer these people to for counseling. Or, we've had people turned away from emergency rooms because they've got, swastika tattoos. There's a real stigma, and rightly so, right? But at the same time, that stigma shouldn't be so great to deny them basic human needs.
So do you think that you or we collectively can put together that strong wave of compassion that goes against the hate that you talk about? Obviously, you must have hope, otherwise why would you do this? But it looks like it's a daunting challenge, especially considering much of this happens beyond the view of the average person.
It is a daunting challenge, but it's a daunting challenge to each individual. I mean, we need to look in. I think in the book I encourage everyone to look into their own lives and see where they are judgmental, see where they dehumanize other human beings, and maybe it's not the color of a person's skin, but the color of the hat they choose to wear, or there's a whole pile of reasons why we take someone, label them, dehumanize them, and deem them not worthy to be part of society. And if we do that for anybody, regardless of what they've done or who they are, then I think we, as individuals, we have a bit of a problem there. I believe the level to which we dehumanize other human beings is a mere reflection of how internally disconnected and dehumanized we are. And it's a matter of what are we going to put into the world? Are we going to put kindness into the world? Or are we going to put fear? And it's choosing in every moment of every day, through every little action, to put love and kindness into the world in the way we treat other human beings, even human beings that we feel we can't tolerate or can't stand.
In other words, we all have a responsibility.
Everybody has a responsibility. It's like recycling.
Well, you quote Gandhi, be the change. How exactly does that quote go? I get it wrong.
Be the change you wish to see.
Be the change you wish to see. And really, that's what this is about, isn't it? If we want to see a different expression of interaction in our society, we have to live that ourselves.
That's right. We can't scream at somebody else for not being intolerant and then have intolerance within ourselves. And I think when we start focusing less on what other people are doing and who we are in the world, we inspire those around us to greater acts of kindness and compassion from a position of strength. So often vulnerability, kindness, compassion, and these types of things are seen as weak, but they're incredibly powerful. And when we're courageous and in what we do in this world, we can inspire people around us to do the same and multiply it, like a virus of compassion.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Thank you for coming in and sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.